All right. Welcome to Smut and Study Podcast. I'm Amanda.
I'm Natalie.
And today we're just going to kind of introduce ourselves, tell you about why we decided to start the podcast, our favorite books, our love for books, and just like a little bit of background about us. So, like I said, I'm Amanda. I am 29 years old. Oh my God, that was hard to say. Old lady over
Just
here.
wait.
I was born in New York originally, came down to Florida, pretty much lived my whole life in Florida. I started out bartending, which loved that job, and then my crazy self decided to go to nursing school. Um, we actually met in our little journeys of work. We both were cardiac nurses, and then we decided that we did not like that, so we jumped ship and went to the operating room. Yes, call us crazy. You know,
We are.
there's all that stigma about nurses. Maybe it's true. I don't know.
Definitely
So
true.
pretty much like this one got me into reading.
Guilty.
As of right now, I would say that Throne of Glass is probably my favorite series, even though it's hard to narrow it down. Um, but I used to read a little bit when I was like growing up. You know, I feel like everybody read those books because school made you read the books. I think I started with like The Outsiders and then moved to Harry Potter. I think I got to like the fifth book and was like, screw this shit. This is large. And then I moved to Twilight, which like I think once the movies come out for books, you kind of like, especially just my younger mind, like I started Twilight and then the movies came out and then I was like, well, why would I read the rest of the book if like the movie's here?
Yeah.
And then I just
That's
remember
fair.
one movie was coming out, Dear John, and I used to be obsessed with Channing Tatum. Like that was probably my favorite actor. And then I was like, I have to read the book because everybody always says that the books are better than the movies. So I like rushed, read this whole book, Dear John, and then watched the movie. And I think that's probably the like synopsis of my reading journey until now.
I
So
love that
I
for you.
like took time off of work. I decided I was going to be a travel nurse, and I like the first month that I was off of work, I was so bored. I was like, oh my god, like nothing's on the TV. I kept watching like reruns of like Sex in the City. So I knew she read, and I was like, hey, like what's a good book to like start to get into, because I am so sick and tired of sitting on the couch and watching TV. I felt so lazy. And she's like, oh, like, you know, Akatar is my favorite. You have to start with this book. And I was like, okay, well, I don't know if I'm ready to start on a 5-book journey for like the first series. She was. So I started off with Fourth Wing, fell in love with that, immediately read Iron Flame, and then jumped into Akatar. But that is pretty much my reading journey. And, you know, the books just kept on coming and coming and coming. And now, you know, here we are.
All right. Here we are.
Yeah.
Literally, this is what's happening now. We're so obsessed. This is what we're doing. Okay, so my name is Natalie. I'm 31 years old. You thought 29 was hard. 31 years old. Like Amanda said, we both met on the cardiac unit and, we hung out. We were like good friends. And then she applied to be an OR nurse, and I was like, I want to also do that. So I followed her, and then we really started hanging out more, really got close, and I have lived in Florida pretty much my whole life. I have a lot of family from Pennsylvania, but I've been here pretty much my whole life, so I'm basically a Floridian at this point. But kind of the same journey as like Amanda's was I read a little bit like in high school. Like I did read Twilight, and I did read Harry Potter, and I did read The Hunger Games was also one that like I couldn't put down. But I feel like I read them kind of before like the movies were really like popular. Like I definitely read like the Hunger Game books before even like there were any movies. So I think that if I wouldn't have done that, I probably wouldn't have read the books too, to be completely honest. And I hated like doing reading assignments in school. Like I was never like a big reader, I guess you could say. But 2023 for my 30th birthday, I had a friend give me the first book of Akatar, A Core of Thorns and Roses. And she was like, oh, this series is really good. And she was very nonchalant about it. Like, it wasn't like she had already read the series. And she was like, oh, yeah, like, you can pick it up. Like, it's a good series, yada, yada. But it took me like 2 months to get through the first book because I didn't really know what I know now. But after it took me 2 months to get to the first book, the rest of the books I flew through and absolutely became like obsessed. And I basically became like one of those really annoying. It was my entire personality. It still is my entire personality. Like, to be honest, anyone who doesn't read these books, I shove it down their throat like I'm preaching the gospel. And
You're like a Jehovah's Witness, like knocking on the door.
Yeah, it's like the gospel is ACOTAR, okay, and you need to read it. And Sarah J. Maas is queen, okay. So right now, I mean, you could pretty much say that like I have a problem with like reading books. It
Small
is,
one.
yeah, it is the beginning of December, and I have read 76 books this year.
Psycho.
And I have a job, and I have a husband. My poor husband. Oh my gosh. And I know that there's probably a lot of you out there who have read probably twice as much as I have, or like Amanda has, or whatever. But it's just crazy to think about the fact that like before that book in 2023, like I hadn't read a book in like years. And then that started it. And I read ACOTAR, and then I read Throne of Glass, and then I read Crescent City. And speaking like from like an outsider's perspective, Throne of Glass is like obviously like way better than ACOTAR and Crescent City. Like that, those books are like pure genius. Like I don't even know how all of that was in her brain. But because ACOTAR was my first like book series that got me into this fantasy like world, like it still has like a place in my heart.
Yeah.
So like I feel like I still tell people that ACOTAR series is like my favorite series just because that's what like started it all. But like in my brain, I know that it's like Throne of Glass, you know? And then basically I went from like, you know, I was like, oh, I read these fantasy series, and then I was like, oh, maybe I'll like dive into like a little bit of romance. And then I was like, this doesn't like the modern day romance just like doesn't hit. Like it's not good. Like
Yeah.
I'm just kind of like, oh, like he works at a coffee shop, like lame. He has like a
This
normal.
reminds me too much of daily life.
Yeah, I'm like he has a normal job, like that's lame. And so our fantasy books, even you know, for both of us, it started out as like just fantasy smut. You know, gotta have the spicy. gotta have the spicy, ladies. Okay. But now it's like dark romance too, and now I feel like I have an even bigger problem now because I'll read like a fantasy book, and then I'll read like dark romance, and I'll read fantasy and then dark romance. But it's very frightening how easily you can like read it or listen to it. Amanda listens to it in her car, and keep a straight face.
Yeah.
So you know, that's our journey, and we wanted to start this podcast just because we think we're funny. And
We think we are, so you have to let us know if we are or not.
we think we're funny. We think we're funny. We think we know something about these books, and you know, we talk about them all the time in our daily lives every time we see each other, whatever the new series is we're reading or the new books. And so I think our thought process was that like, you know, as like a fun sort of hobby, like what if we just did like a YouTube podcast video, and then you know, maybe other girls can watch it, and you know, we can talk about, you know, theories and morally gray men and like, you know, all this stuff. But of course we're going to start with the very first book of ACOTAR and then go through the Sarah J. Maas universe. And then who knows, maybe we'll do like some dark romance, you know, books, and hopefully our husbands don't watch any of this.
If you are Jeff Jordan or Shane Strett, skip.
No. But seriously, just don't even bother.
Yeah.
You don't want to know.
You can watch the first episodes, but after that, it might go downhill. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, no, we just kind of figured, like, we talk about this so much, like, we literally would just have girls' nights, just me and her, like, have our own little book club of 2. But, like, we literally could talk about these books for, like, hours.
Yeah.
And, you know, we just would love to share our little love and hear what other people have to say about their book journeys.
Yeah. Their theories, like I said, who, you know, any sort of thoughts on characters or characters' death or whatever, like as we progress, you know, through like this podcast and stuff. Or hey, even like, you know, oh, you like this series, you should also read this series, because like we're still, you know, like brand new, and like our TBRs grow every single day, you know, like on Book Talk or just like, hearing about like, oh, if you like this series, you'll like this series. So we thought it'd be a good platform just to connect with other people and that have like the same love for like reading these books and the same kind of thoughts that we do, and just join us on this crazy.
It's also nice to have a book
journey.
bestie because we just keep each other accountable. We're like, did you finish the book?
Yeah.
Did you read this book? What
Yeah.
book did you just read? You have to read this one next. And Natalie is the fastest reader you'll ever meet. So it's kind of hard to catch up. But
I'm not. I just get obsessed. And I think that's like the problem that I have, is that I just like that, and me getting the Kindle was probably because I feel like I read like all of like the Sarah J. Maas like universe except for Crescent City, because that's when I got my Kindle. I read that in like book form, but like I just read like for days, like just like nonstop, because they were like so good. But it also helps, if like your significant other like has other hobbies, and so it's like you can just kind of just do your own thing and separate and everything like that. But reading has definitely changed our lives, and we are absolutely obsessed with it. So we just we want everyone else to be obsessed with it just like we are.
Yes.
So follow along on our journey with us if you want. Hopefully you do. Hopefully we're somewhat entertaining, whether you're listening in the car or just want to watch us while you're taking a shit on the toilet. Either way, whatever you want to do, I hope you enjoy this journey.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in with us. And hopefully you guys keep following along.
Yeah. We should have our first episode out very shortly.
All right.